Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to another wonderful episode of Tattoos and Toddlers. Y'all have no idea how much fun this is for me. And I just keep meeting amazing people. So I drag them on the podcast to have a fun conversation. Hi, I'm Jen with Weirdo Weddings Photography. I'm a mom, I'm an artist, I'm all the things and a wife and all the things that go with having a life. And I just started this podcast because of a need to talk about parenting mixed with business, mixed with very fun tattoo stories. Because as we know, people with tattoos are very interesting people. So I have Mark Addington today. I
Thank
am
you,
so
Jen.
excited. It was so random how we met. I was just starting to talk about, things in the wedding industry and WIPA and all these other things. And all of a sudden I met Mark and I was like, man, you need to be on my podcast. So welcome, Mark. Why don't you introduce yourself real fast?
Awesome. Yes. And we definitely, I feel like we connected on just talking to WIPA and wedding stuff. And then I feel like the conversation, I don't even want to say it derailed. It went a great direction. And I was just like, oh my God. So thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on here today.
Yes.
My name is Addington. I own a wedding DJ entertainment company, Mark Addington Events in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've been DJing for about 20 years, which gets kind of scary. You're like, how did that happen so fast? And in that time, of course, same thing. Parent. I will say, we keep trying to avoid the pandemic talk, but during the pandemic, you were like, oh, do we pivot? Do we change? And I realized that what I was doing was my creative outlet. This is my love. I did not realize how much passion that I had for what I was doing when I wasn't doing until I didn't do it. And it was interesting. So and I have, let's see, my son Ryder was born 2019, and then my daughter was born not that far after that. And so I have two pandemic babies, and then crazy enough I have a 19-year-old as well. So it's been an interesting couple of years, but it's been beautiful. So
Well, I love that because we're going to dive into our family life and the things that we think about our kids. And then what we connected on also was how we both kind of grew up in a very interesting way. And, but first, I also want to talk about our happy places because behind you, for those listening, he's got a Blink 182. It's not even a poster, it's a memorial.
yeah,
It's like a big piece of
I
art. So, yeah, we were talking about how Blink 182, how we could connect on even Blink 182 together musically. So, I want you to share just a second. What does Blink 182 mean to you? I mean,
Oh, that's such a great question. It's my happy place. I'm definitely a punk pop kid. I really grew up, adoring, and I went to a lot of like the big, festivals and things like that beforehand. And just being a music person in general, I've always had an affinity with everything, but there was something about, and I think we all kind of have that one
yes.
group or that band that just you hear and you smile. And I am definitely one of those people that associates moments in life with music. So I'm always like laying my own soundtrack. But there's something just fun about Blink. And I feel like, I just saw them a month and a half ago.
Oh my gosh.
And I feel like they're older, they're dialed in now with their music. And it really, like, I feel like I've grown up with them. The picture that nobody else can see that's behind me happens to be it's a signed poster, and a ticket from a lanyard from a VIP pass, and then of course it's a ticket from one of their shows that it just happens to be ticket number 182. So I'm just like,
Oh my gosh.
you've got
Nerdville.
that, and that's where I live. That's my area. If you saw the rest of my office, you'd see Star Wars stuff, you'd see Marvel stuff, you'd see Legos, you'd see Harry Potter. I very much live in that geek realm. And I do honestly love on the DJ side of things when I get those couples that are just like, and my
Yes.
favorite now is, and I think because a lot of us grew up in that area where it still wasn't 100% cool to be like yourself,
Yeah.
that now it's so funny when my couples come to me and they're like, so Mark, we have a request and it's a little weird. And I'm like, what is it? And they're like, we want some Disney music, or I want to walk down the aisle to Lord of the Rings. And I'm like, I am so there. That is so
Yes.
cool. And it's fun.
Yes.
Like, oh, so do you want to walk down to Concerning Hobbits? And they're like, how did you know? That just makes me happy and feeds that. I almost even like that Peter Pan inner child.
Oh my gosh, yes. And so, like, when we're talking happy places, which everybody knows I'm a Blue Man Group fan, and when we talk memorabilia, I have it all over my wall. I have a ping pong ball from the show in 2020 before the world shut down. I have a ping pong ball in ripped up paper because they weren't doing confetti like in traditional ways. So we all ripped
Right.
up our playbill things or whatever. It's a piece of paper basically. And
Yeah.
it's this neon yellow, and we got to throw it up in the air at the
Oh,
show. And so I have that. I also have an original face print from one of the founders, Chris Wink, up here when they did the 20th or the 25th anniversary. And oh, what else do I have? I have one of the flowers from the show. It's so many fun things in my office that I know that I can look at as my still in my happy place. Because I think when we're in our offices or when we're in our working spaces, and we're not out at events, it's like it's nice to have something that you're celebrating who you are in your own office.
yeah.
But
I agree. We went to for my birthday, we went to Disneyland, of course. There's
Mhm.
a whole like story that goes along with where we were supposed to go.
Yeah.
But we actually did one of those special tours in the park, and we got to visit like Walt Disney's apartment and everything like that.
Wow.
It was amazing because it was one of those first times that my wife and I actually just did a solo trip away. And
Yeah.
it sounds weird without my kids, but like we needed a break, and we also needed somewhere we could get to quick and be back in the short amount of time that we had. But I have the name tag that's right over here that I keep looking at because it was such a great memory. And I agree with you that our workplace is our workplace, but it doesn't need to be, just sterile.
Yeah.
Especially for I should say for
Oh
creatives.
my gosh,
I think
yes.
that I need to see this stuff because I need to go, there is a life outside of where I'm at, and that, and I know that there's that myth of work-life balance, which doesn't really exist, but, at least if I can kind of go, happy place, we're good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I keep one big photograph on my wall up here that I'm looking at right now. It's my grandma in South Dakota, my dad, and my baby daughter and myself, that 3 or 4 generation photo, right? Like sometimes we forget to take that kind of stuff. So I keep this up here very special because, like we were talking about how we grew up and we lived in a lot of different places. I hardly get to see my family in South Dakota. It's just a trek.
Yes. Yeah, and I am realizing, and I don't. There's a couple pieces that go in here. A
Yep.
lot of it is obvious as we're getting older. You start to kind of realize some of the other stuff that really is important.
Yeah.
Um, I also, talking about moving around a lot. My child was kind of crazy, and we're just now unpacking some of that childhood trauma
Yeah.
um, from being when I was younger, and I'm realizing that there are those things that are important to us that I was told that was not okay to do when I was younger.
Mm,
I'm like, oh, wait, this is my life. And I unfortunately do have family members that I'm not very close with just because of the way that I was raised,
same.
or we don't have the same values now. And I choose to raise my children under certain values that I don't know who they're going to grow up to love. I don't know how, but I'm going to learn what I need to learn so I can be supportive for them whenever they go out into the world and take on their own personalities.
Yeah.
So, but man, that moving all over, that, I know we were joking around before. It's like now that we're trying to not do that to them, like what struggles do we need to give them?
Yes, I love this because, I have an only child. She'll be an only child. You have 3. You have 2, one, like you said, 2 back-to-back little babies, and then an older generation, definitely 2 different modalities, things happening right now. And I was just discussing with my husband, and I was like, how are we gonna, like, she's taken care of. She doesn't even have a sibling to fight with, you know?
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah,
how do we be aware of her needing to have the struggle? We cannot cater to every woman desire because that's not life. That's not real life. And so that's my struggle as a parent of an only child. So I throw her out into the world as much as possible. Like I feel like her being in a team environment, a classroom environment, having best friends, I think all these things will add into her life eventually, even though her mind is still like a 6-year-old. I think all these things that I'm doing I'm hoping that I've worked through enough of my childhood trauma to push her forward into whatever she wants to do instead of just floundering around and trying to figure out what to do with her life. But so kind of speak to that a little bit. Like how are you kind of translating your childhood mixed in with raising kids, even more specific than what you just shared? Is there some things that are coming up for you as you're starting to parent? Uh-oh. Did I lose you?
Oh, there we go. It
There you
paused for
are.
about, we're back. So, it's really definitely interesting in the aspect of, so with having a wide age gap between the two kids,
Yeah.
I will say that when I became, a parent, so when Xander was born, who's my oldest, it all happened very quickly in this aspect of my brother passed away from suicide a week before Xander was born.
Oh my gosh.
And knowing, and as close as my brother and I were, I really think that everything he was going through, he had the foresight to see that Xander would get me through everything that was, whatever. And I went from, in a week, the lowest low to the highest high. And I'm only, like, I want to say within the past couple of years, really able to talk about that.
Wow.
Um, it's been a struggle, and I will tell you, Jen, I am phenomenal at compartmentalizing, right?
Uh-huh.
And you just take stuff and you put it away because these are my focuses now, and now it's all coming back out, and we're seeing a therapist, and you just start to go, ooh, I had some stuff that was packed away,
Yeah, you
right?
had to shed some light on some dark spaces there.
Yes. But with Xander, like and then after about a year and a half, like maybe about a year and a half, 2 years in, his mom, we get along well. She is a flight attendant and decided that she needed to be a citizen of the world. And I have no problem with that. I took on Xander from age 2 until I met my wife at about, he was what, 10 or so. And I could do what I could do, and I only knew.
No, it froze again. It froze.
Are we back?
Yes, you're back. And I said you were at the, oh, I can only do what I could do.
I only know what I know from parenting, from watching my parents, my
Yeah.
dysfunctional family.
Yeah.
I mean, my parents got divorced at a young age. My mom wound up moving to Australia. My dad hid us around the country from our mom. Absolutely, we moved like every 3 months. You talk about like something that should be put into a movie, like that was a
Yes.
little insane. So I wasn't given a pattern of this is how you should teach your kids.
Yeah.
And my dad was also focused on, because I had a brother, he was focused on work, didn't really care to raise my brother and I. It was more of a, we want you as a possession.
Yeah.
And so when I had Xander, now I'm like, oh my God, I've got to do all this on my own. And I was working at a casting agency. I was working as a DJ on the weekend. So, I mean, I was the 7-day a week breadwinner, but I loved what I did because it was creative. But I had to drop out of one of those, and I dropped the casting agency, and I was focusing more on just the DJ side of things. I was working for a company that at least allowed me to have time to pick him up after school, and I could bring him to the office, and it was a very flexible lifestyle. They weren't a very good company, but it was a nice lifestyle, right? He is, whereas I'm an extrovert, he's a little bit more on the introvert side. He's the kid that you'd have to drop off at school, and you'd have to hang out for like 45 minutes to an hour and a half until he was adjusted for school, right? And we did what we did to survive. We did. I parented the best that I could. He made it to 19. I feel like I've accomplished something. But even now, he doesn't have that ambition that he's discovering. I shouldn't say he doesn't have the ambition. It's such a bad way to put it. He has not discovered what he wants to do with his life yet.
Yeah.
But I am 100% supportive of every step that he takes. I feel bad, and that's something I'm learning to do, is just because I am extroverted and I'm out every weekend and I work and I don't rely upon a lot of people for whatever, that I don't need to project that onto him. And I'm very, like, it's always been, I actually kind of, we were going to move down to San Diego at one point before I met my wife, because he always wanted to be a zoologist and he wanted to work at the San Diego Zoo. And so now, like, we're talking to him because, living in the Bay Area, he's really been watching like a lot of like blacksmithing videos and all this other stuff. Well, Oakland actually has a really cool blacksmithing community. So I'm like, if you want to, I will drive you there and, intern you and everything else like that. So it's trying to find out what his creative element is, but he's also hooked on video games. So
Yeah.
I don't know how to, it's like, it's not me, but I'm understanding of this stuff. Whereas I will say that with my 3-year-old and my 5-year-old, I can't stop them from going outside. I can't stop them from being overly active. For being pandemic babies, like, they're so social. And I'm just, they're social in a way I never thought that, like I said, it's weird to go, especially like with Ryder and Xander. They're both boys that are from the same DNA on my end,
Yes.
but they're so different. And it's so like to sit there and you just take those moments to pause and you look back and you go, what was different? Was the environment different?
Yeah.
And I will say the one thing that is different is that I have a very strong, supportive wife. That to do this with 2 people is way different than doing it with one.
It is.
And for us to be able to say, I need a breather, and to walk away, and financially, with owning my own DJ company, to not have to, I mean, we have our struggles, but you don't have the struggles that I had when I was just a DJ, that I was working for a company that, didn't invest in their employees, so you sit here and you go, wow, 2 different environments. So it does have something to do with that. I had a support system with Xander, but not a support system that I do now. I have my wife, I have my wife's family. It's unreal.
That is so dramatically different. I love that you are actually experiencing that and sharing that, because I think there's a lot of people that could relate to that.
It is. It's interesting, and it's and I always kind of say, like, it's funny because I do have the friends that are getting married, the friends that want parental advice, and the hard part about it is, in all honesty, there's a lot of similarities in a lot of it, and then there's a lot of your world, though, is a little different than my world, so that will shape some of those pieces that go into it. One of the best things, on all honesty, that I think that my wife and I did was we stopped following a lot of these like Instagrammers that, were saying, oh, being a parent is perfect and here's every day and blah, 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 because it really started to let down some of these expectations. And even though I'd been through some of this stuff before, I had that idea that, oh my gosh, I messed up with, Xander. So now I really need to try this here and here. And I didn't. We were in a different point in a place at that time. And now we're here. For my wife, I mean, there was a lot of that stuff that was really hard that Instagrammers were just putting out there, that, oh, this should be so easy and this is whatever. And I mean, a lot of those pieces were like, oh, breastfeeding, it's so simple. And I'm watching her like just break down because it's not easy. But that's great. I think there should almost be a disclaimer on that stuff of, this was really easy for us, might not be for you, And I think that's what you have to learn is you have your own journey and your own struggles, and you have to make those through. And I looked at therapy for many years as, I think, 2 pieces. One, I was really afraid that if I got into therapy, that I was going to open a door that I was not able to shut. I mean, a total Pandora's box, that I was like, oh my God, which I did. And it was true, but they were needed. But the other side, it was kind of looked at as, and it was the way that I was taught. We don't go, by my dad, you don't go to the doctor. You don't go to, you don't get your checkups. you don't need to talk to anybody. Strong men are, do this, and this, and you should work all the time, and this is the place, for this is what women do. And that's how I was, with what I was looked at and when I was raised. And this wasn't even now. A long time ago, I stepped away when I moved, and I was like, that's not how I want to live my life. I don't feel that I am in any way, shape, or form perfect. So I'm going to live the way that I see other people, and what I love and what I enjoy and what I want to project out there is perfect. And so now it was very easy when we did slide into therapy, to kind of go, okay, this stuff is going to be open and it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
But it's so helpful. It's been so helpful to have tools, and it's been so helpful to understand, like, I pay a lot of attention to, like, neurodivergent people. I'm very, like, into understanding mental health. I'm very much into understanding inclusivity, and I'm very much into understanding, basically every piece, because I don't walk those steps in anybody else's shoes. And I love learning about it, because there's those things it's really easy to put blinders on. But I feel that the more that my eyes are open and the more that I'm understanding and whatever, it helps me understand and talk to my kids better. So anyway, I just rambled. I hope that makes sense.
No, and I think what's great is that ties back into moving a lot too. Like, there's two things. When you move a lot and you're around a lot of different people, you're taking in and learning about other people. And then you're
Yeah.
also having to adopt your own family. And I think that somebody put it to me several years ago, your chosen family. And I was like, well, I said, I do love my blood family a lot, but I can't be around them and I can't have expectations of them that they can't fulfill. And it's not fair to them. And there were many years where I'm just, you know what? I'm good. I'm good here where I am. I've adopted a whole bunch of family over the last 23 years here in Dallas. And I'll like just keep adopting more people because I do think we shouldn't do life alone. And if we can't be near our blood family, or we choose not to be around our blood family, there's nothing wrong with those things. And I think, like you were saying, our journeys are individual. And I think for me, when you were talking about your wife, I was like, oh, I could think about all the things that I was told as a new mom, or somebody who was pregnant and 40 years old, that I had 5 voices telling me what to do. And I was like, eventually I just had to say, shut up, y'all. I got to listen to my own self, and I'll fight for what I want until I can't do anything anymore. And it's one of those things that you kind of have to walk through your own journey, and there is no two lookalikes. And I think that's
Right.
what's great about meeting people like you, and meeting people that just, you're starting to see the worlds of possibilities just inside yourself first. Like you're
Right.
opening up the doors, right? Opening up the doors of all these compartments of who you are and a part of your story. And then as you start sharing more of your story with other people, it's the same. Like it opens them up with another way to communicate with you that they wouldn't have thought about before. That's kind of how I
Yeah.
see life right now. It's just like, oh, look, yeah, oh, I did, me too. You know?
But it's weird because I think that too, I think that, and I don't know any studies on this, so I apologize if I'm
Yeah.
just spewing, but like I will say, those of us that have done a lot of these things when we were younger, like the moving around and or whatever trauma or whatever, I totally 100% understand where like that imposter syndrome comes from now, and why we don't feel that we're good enough, or as some of the others, we start doing that self-doubt and all those other things. And
Yeah.
I will say, I fell into a very comfort level with the DJ company that I was working for. I kept kind of looking at other things, but I was like, I don't know, I'm very comfortable here, and I was scared to take those steps. I met my wife. We clicked on so many levels, and when and she was great to my son,
Yeah.
and she also was great with saying, I do want to have more kids. Are you open to that? Absolutely. And I also, these are the things that I want to achieve, but we need to sit down and look at them as a team. And how do we achieve these things? And it really started me to look at what else am I doing? Let's put our finances down. Let's figure those things out. Those are other things. You talk about things you never taught when you were little. I was never taught financial planning, and I don't blame the school and I don't blame my parents, but it should be something in both areas. The other side of it is, like just general life skills that were never handed off to us, whatever. So now we jumped in and we had a very uncomfortable and, conversation about finances and things like that and what's possible. But I wasn't making what was needed to be made there.
Yeah.
And I perchance was just going through and looking at other jobs. And I said, oh, there's a position open at Pixar. And I'm like, I am not just in Emeryville. And I'm like, I can't do that. And I was like, wait a minute, what's stopping me? What is stopping me other than myself of saying, I can't go work at Pixar? So I sent over my resume. I got an interview and I got a job working at Pixar for a year. And it's part of the other reason as to why my office is decorated the way it is, because creativity in their employees. If you get stumped, you get up and you walk away and you do something, and then you come back and you're now reinvigorated. But it really made me think, like I said, that why am I putting up these roadblocks? And then I started getting all these people requesting, well, you did my daughter's wedding, now you've got to do my, son's, we had whatever. So I went up deep into some stuff on the weekend, and, my wife had been bugging me the whole time. Why don't you start your own company? Well, I'm not good enough to start my own company. Why would I do that? And I would have to, it was the best decision I ever made. I am now going, oh my God, my creativity is fostered every weekend. I'm doing what I love, and I'm getting that back in reviews and smiles on the dance floor. I'm playing music that I love. I love everything, like at this point of like, dude, I am good enough to do these things. So I'm really starting to figure out, as you said, as it starts going on, that there's these things that, like, these walls that were put up. Why were these walls put up? Well, I was holding myself back. And so now I do think that you need to, like, stop every so often and think and reinvent yourself, or take on a new hobby, or try something different, because it just satisfies something else. And you don't get to that point where you're like, I've been doing this 10 years and I'm bored, and why did I never do something different? Or why did I never stop, to think? And this is a team effort between, my wife and I. I'm very lucky to have a very good support system. And don't get me wrong, there are struggles every day. I think I told you the story, but my son's first day of kindergarten, we're waiting in line to pick him up at school. And we're standing there, and the next thing I know, I just see water spraying all over these kids. A maintenance person had left a hose sitting on the ground, and water's going everywhere and spraying. And all I can think of is, don't be my son. Don't be my son. Don't be my son. It was my son. He saw picked up the nozzle, and the thing just started going. And I think he panicked, didn't know what to. So here's all these kids waiting to take their after school. And my kid has drenched everybody. So you're sitting here, well, there we go. Great first day of kindergarten story made for my son, not everybody else, but whatever. It was what it was. So like I said, you're always going to have these little pieces, but I think it's just finding out how to, like, move forward without those traumas from the past, move forward in a different element of talking to my son versus what I had learned before. We've got to raise our voice and we've got to yell because I'm a man and that's how it is. And that obviously doesn't work. So
yeah, and I really liked what you said about even watching how we project onto our kids is very important. And that's a daily thing. Let's just say that's a daily struggle to the urge to manipulate and bribe with food and snacks and treats and prizes is endless, but that's not real life either. So I'm consistently like, okay, how do I work the scenario to teach her to be a human being instead of, oh, I get stuff all the time.
It's so true. I will say, I mean, just from being a single parent for a long time, I do think that it's a little harder being a single parent and doing that versus having a few kids, because now it's not like everybody can't have something. So it's, is what it is.
Yeah.
I spoiled Xander 100%. It just, we had so many things that we did together,
Yeah.
Oh, we want to build. Oh, let's go get one. And we get one and we build. But that just started something, No, it is. It's those daily things. And what do we have going on in our lives that now we come down to the way that we're talking or the way that we're upset or those pieces are definitely what's projected out there. We do a kind of a really good job with in a week or in a couple of days. Like if my daughter has had, there's we do give them the iPad sometimes to like do their games. And we also know that at some point, because they've done those, now we need to balance that out with some physical activity or some park time.
Yes. Or
And
cleaning
those
your
were
room, even. Just clean your room.
and those are things that I wasn't taught when I was younger. Those were things that, because my dad was working all the time and it was just my brother and I had to, and I was the oldest. I grew up fast. I parented.
Yeah.
And that's also too why I think that, just going back to it, but when my brother passed, it hit me a lot harder than it hit my parents.
You were heavily invested in his life.
Yep. And there was so many of those pieces, and there's, the unfortunates too. And I know that we don't have too much time left, but we're caretaking my dad now, and the unfortunates of is he has dementia. And when we first moved him in, I was so excited because I was going to get those stories of my brother that I didn't know. And unfortunately, he doesn't have those. And that was another trauma that I kind of had to work through.
Yeah.
It was great because I did. But, so there's those little pieces of, and I used to be a big person that when I walked through the door of my house, I used to tell everybody, I need 30 minutes or 10 minutes just to like decompress, set in traffic, a bad day, blah, blah, blah. And it's so funny because, my wife really, really moved me away from that because she always said so. There's one day I came home and on the door was like a Nerf gun and it was like, good luck. I opened the door and it was like absolutely insane. But like the other day I came home and I came through the gate and my daughter just screams, "Daddy!" and runs over and jumps on me and hugs me in a way that I just started crying. And it was one of those things that I didn't know that I needed. And it wasn't a tough day. I just sat in traffic and came home.
Yeah.
I listened to a book on the way home. It was a very easy drive, but there was something that just took all that stress out. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. So like I said, I feel like I'm working hard, kind of what you said. We're working hard. We're doing what we can. Do they need more? You're always questioning yourself as a parent.
Always.
We need to pull back. But watching them just play on their own, watching them just be imaginative and creative and do voices and sing. We have rules in our house that they are allowed to sing and dance whenever they want. And we all do that. And that's just the rule at our house.
Yeah.
Really quick, because I know tattoos
as we're wrapping up.
I do have a tattoo. It's on my shoulder. I mean, nobody can see this, but so quick story on this one is, so with my son being named Xander, I wanted his name spelled with an X. Because I wanted his nickname to be the X-Man. Yes. And I really loved it because, my name is very generic, Mark. It gets rhymed with everything. Mark, Shark, Park, Dark. I got all the time in school. I wanted something that just, was cool. And all the kids love calling him X or X-Man. My tattoos basically, and it was given to me by somebody that I worked with that we were not necessarily close. We never actually worked together. And she gave me the idea. She's like, "Mark, why don't you just combine a couple things? Why don't you do the X-Man symbol, so which is the circle with the X in it, and some tribal stuff around it?" And I was like, "Wait, I'm down with this. That's amazing." We have since become like great friends, and I DJ'd her wedding. But it was weird that it took that to connect us. And then I had another friend that designed the tribal portion of everything. I love my tattoo, but now I'm in dilemma of, I've got 2 more kids. I want to get more tattoos, but what do I do? And so that's the big thing that we're working on now.
Oh my gosh. And we will have to have a part 2 for this, y'all. So you're going to have to stay tuned for a part 2 with Mark. I feel like we got to have him back.
Yeah, there's
so
more to
until
unbox.
the next time, y'all, until the next time, we will talk to you again soon. So have a great day.
Bye. Thank you, Jen.